Hi everyone, my name's John Meyer and I'm also known as the AWS blogger, and I put together this podcast series to talk about why I left AWS. Now, and I always start this out and let everybody know that AWS is awesome. The services that they have and built are completely, I enjoy all of them and I love learning about them. Why I left, and before I kind of dive all into that one, this series or this episode, I'm going to be talking about the AWS interview process and how I got hired by an awesome leader, not a boss, an awesome leader. And his boss, which was also known as a skip manager, was awesome as well. And I know I used the word awesome a little too much, but they were the best. Now, a quick recap. In the previous ones, I started out giving you the backstory on why I wanted to work for AWS and how I found out about AWS. Then I talked about working for various companies who gave me a chance. My last one, which was an MSP, that, it was actually a good stepping stone and it provided me a lot of information in preparation for my AWS interview. Now, let's talk about the AWS interview process. Typically, you get a call from a recruiter. They do a quick screen. They know what to look for and to see if you're, to pass you on to the hiring manager. Then you get a call from the hiring manager and they talk to you a little bit more. And they find out and it's really a little bit of a cross between, tell me about yourself. Let's touch on a little bit of LPs and a little bit of technical stuff. Now, a hiring manager can be technical or not, because most of hiring managers come from a technical background or, kind of move up there or hired within. So you got to realize that you are going to get some technical. After that, it's a loop. What AWS calls a loop is basically a round of 5 interviews, usually 45 minutes apiece. And how mine went was it was up in New York, so I drove up there. I'm located here on the East Coast. As I drove up, and before I get into that, let's back up. Listen, the role that I was hiring for was a partner solutions architect underneath cloud management tools, and the hiring manager that I got a chance to talk to and interact with was so down to earth, was really relaxed, and kind of gave me the background on him, and we got to know each other personally. So this was really, really cool. And he's like, all right, I'm going to send you onto the loop. Here's the loop. They were really quick on this. I think I went through the process in like 2 weeks. All right, now let's talk about going up to New York for the loop. In preparation, there are AWS or Amazon has what they call leadership principles. There's 14 of them. And what you need to do is actually develop like 2 stories or 10 really good stories for each one of the leadership principles. Keep in mind, frugality is really or rarely ever used, so I wouldn't really prep too much on that. You might actually come across a time where how were you able to accomplish more with less type question. But when you come up with these stories, I'm going to talk to you about the method I used and some of the data points. And then I'll talk to you about, I'm jumping around here a little bit, but I'll talk to you about New York and how I really came about it. What I did is I took, and you have to use real examples. If you make something up, they're going to catch you because your data points aren't going to match as your long terms, and you have to use real life experience. And in most cases, they don't even care that you don't know all about the AWS services or all of them. I mean, how can you? What are there, over like 200 now? And you can quote me on that because I don't work for AWS anymore, but there's so many, and they don't expect you to learn them. Back then, when I talked about how I was able to fit all the services on one 8x11 sheet of paper and talk about them, that's actually where my failure was in my previous interviews, because I didn't know about their loop or their leadership principles style. I mean, I've read about it, they gave me it, but I didn't understand the whole interview process. What I did is I took a couple of the stories that I did. An example in my previous episode, I talked about AWS Landing Zone. Well, talk about the STAR method. What is the situation? What were you trying to achieve? What was the outcome and what was the results of that? Each one of those needs data points. And when you talk about these situations, you have to talk about you. Now, it's really hard to do in most cases. Most people are like, I don't want to talk about me. I say we. You need to tell them about your contribution. What did you do? What did you go above and beyond? And when I say above and beyond is a bar raiser. That person that didn't stay there at the average part, they're like, you know what, I'm going to go above and beyond. An example of this, as I talked about in the previous one, is when I sat down and I played blackjack with Andy Jassy. Now it was a total accident. But I went above and beyond, and I was able to figure out a way for the customer that we were working with on how to resolve landing zone issues or things for implementation. I was also, how to do like account aliases in landing zone and implement those. And I didn't stop. I don't know was not an answer for me. I needed to figure it out, or a workaround or an ultimate solution for that one. So that is above and beyond one. That's what you'll never know who your bar raiser is going into the conversation. That person they don't disclose that information for various reasons. I mean, if you know your bar raiser, you're going to talk about the greatest thing you went above. You should always talk about the greatest thing in every single conversation on what you did and you went and achieved. And when they say data points, like how many, an example of this one for landing zone, I was able to implement it in less than 30 days in a production environment and save the company X amount of dollars. There's all kinds of data points. What was the metrics that you were trying to utilize? Like we were able to identify, a failure rate of X% and get that down to lower than 3%. Those are data points. Those are the things that I can always say when you're talking about a story. Add "so what" to the end of it. So what? Does it withstand that? There's a good book out there. Fact of the day. There's a great things on how to write these stories or how to write a narrative. One of them is add "by zombies" at the end of it, and does it make out a point? And always do more with less. The biggest thing is when you're talking. You're trying to tell this story and you're trying to give this person a background on this full-on, LP that you feel valued, but you know the information. So start out. What was the situation? I was implementing landing zone in the early stages, version 1.2, not the first version. Give them an actual version number. 1.2, and we had it in a development environment. I had it semi in production environment, but I needed to do account aliases for this person so that it could automatically be added to ADFS or Federation into their environment, so users could have access rather than implementing IAM credentials or local users. Great, that's awesome. That gives you a lot of information. How did you go about fixing this or resolving this? Well, a lot of the times, I tried to implement a CloudFormation template. I dug deep into the installation through the service accounts and tried to add my own, but unfortunately, there's no AWS command line for account alias. There might be now. Actually, I haven't even checked that. You have to use Bodo for it. Okay. Well, what did you do to resolve that? Well, I contacted support and I didn't get anywhere with support, but finally I was able to get a hold of another colleague who was a CloudFormation, expert. The guy was located in Dublin, and it took him a week to get landing zone installed and set up, and Y and Z. Like, you kind of went through the whole process, and now we're able to implement it in their environment and get the account list, which that was a real story. I mean, I didn't break it down fully into, what I would do in an interview, but I'm trying to give you the basic points there. All right, now let's talk about New York. New York was really, I don't want to say it's a stressful time, because I drove up there. I think I left at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and my meeting was, I think, 9. So I had 9 to 10, and then I had 10 to 11, and then lunch, and then 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I had like 3 in the beginning and 2 afterwards. And you sit down and you talk these one. Now, going into it, I knew the names of the people that I was interviewing with, and your recruiter can give you that information if you ask for it. Now, there's a controversy of looking this person up on social media. I looked them up on LinkedIn and I researched a couple of those and searched it, and I found out one of them created like a podcast style type for something that didn't have to do with technology, and actually intrigued me. So I asked the gentleman at the end of the call, at the end of the interview, when I had free time when I was leaving, I was like, hey, I kind of noticed this. What were you trying to do or accomplish? And it was really interesting. All right, so you go in there, you have 45 minutes. They need to ask you their questions and take notes. So, and it's typically only like 2 questions. They might go to a third if they have a chance. But they're going to dive into this. What did you do? How did you resolve? How would you fix this? What were some of the information that you did at the end? Well, knowing that now, would you do the same thing? Don't be afraid to say, yes, I would do the same thing, because I learned additional aspects of Landing Zone and how to implement it in a major environment. I would have never learned those if it was easily given to me, because it allowed me to work through the inner workings of Landing Zone through step functions and the workflow. And I spent an entire time right around Christmas upgrading the environment from 1.2 to 2.0. And there were so many things that I had to do and figure out and change it. I'm glad the environment was big, but I learned those, and I learned the inner workings. So yes, I would do it again. Afterwards, when they give you a break, take it. Go to the bathroom, wash your hands, get something to drink, walk around. All right, breathe. Come back, sit down, and you do the next one. And you do this 3 times. I did it 3 times in a row, and then you get a lunch buddy. Everybody's like, oh, your lunch buddy's evaluating. My lunch buddy was not evaluating me. We had a casual conversation. He was pretty cool, down to earth, by the way. He was my colleague in one of the environments. I actually worked with him in a number of instances. So he became my colleague as I got hired. But we all know that, and obviously. Now, take your lunch. Enjoy it. Don't think about anything. Don't think about it. Be like, hey, it's okay to be open with them and talk, but don't talk work. Don't talk shop. We went outside. I asked them to go outside. Can we go outside to some place? So I wanted to just relax and get some fresh air. Then you come back and you do it all over again. I was done probably, I was done by 3 o'clock. Now, coming back from New York is usually about an hour and a half drive. It was 3 hours. I didn't get home. As I pulled in at 6 o'clock, my phone rang. It was the recruiter. Apparently, they had their debrief already. So a debrief is, and it gets scheduled within 5 days. So apparently, they had it scheduled right afterwards, or right around there. A debrief is, everybody puts in their notes, in their information, and says, I'm inclined or not inclined. You could have everybody not inclined and one person inclined, and it's a discussion, and everybody can change their mind. The numbers don't matter in their mind. I mean, if they all say not inclined, obviously they're not inclined. But going into it, keep an open mind that you could tank or feel you tanked one, but you could have done really great. It doesn't always work out that you get your debrief right away. It could be a couple days later, and I would have had to wait the weekend. But I got home, I got the call, and I got offered the role there. This was so exciting. I mean, I can end my Friday and not think about it over the weekend, which was great news to me, because I didn't want to stress at all or worry about it. And so I set my start date for 2 weeks. But I was still at this other company, and they already knew that I was looking, because obviously they told us. They said, hey, listen, you might as well, look, you've got 2 months. So it was perfect. Close out from the old company, start AWS, and then transition. I got to talk about, and I'm not going to call him a boss, I got to talk about my leader. My leader captivated everybody on the team. And when I say that is that he was down to earth. He listened to you, and he had your back. And that was the biggest thing. And he didn't micromanage. And if you remember from my previous one, the reason I left AWS is I was stuck in a role I was no longer passionate about, and I was being micromanaged. My boss at the time had no awareness, even though I gave him information of my knowledge of my partners, and it was just like he was telling me and dictating what needed to be done. And instead of asking me, they reacted. Whatever their skip or whatever their boss said, well, actually it was my skip, whatever their boss said, they were reacting towards me and not finding out the true information. So it was always hard. It was an uphill battle for me. And at the time, I was like, I don't like to be micromanaged. And, that was really getting tough in that environment. But that was the boss that I just left. My leader was like completely awesome. And, I'm going to probably end this one here and, kind of just tell you about the leading up to reInvent 2019 and when I put the AWS logo in my hair. And if most of you remember that one, I got to talk about that. And that was an inspiration, not only from my leader and the PDM that I was working with at the time. My name's John Meyer. This is the AWS Blogger. Stay tuned for the next episode where I talk about the reInvent logo and my transition into kind of a new role, that a self-proclaimed evangelist. All right, stay tuned.